Hello there. It's been an exceptionally wet week across many parts of the UK. Much needed rain, of course. It's been very dry over the last year or so across eastern parts of England in particular. Now this map shows how much rain we've seen during the last week or so, since Monday. You can see the key up here along the top. So the reds and the pinks here indicating getting up to or even over 100 millimetres in just 4 days. Now what you notice here is there's been very little rain actually in western Scotland and across parts of Northern Ireland where you would normally expect rain at this time of the year. So they've been below average, whereas many other parts of England and Wales have been above average through this week so far. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at some of the rainfall totals we've seen around the UK during the last 4 or 5 days or so. Starting off in the Scottish borders, again a big rain shadow here, hardly any rain over the western side of the southern parts of Scotland, whereas on the east, because of this onshore flow, it's been the hills that have really been getting a lot of rain, 80 plus millimetres in some places. Worst affected places though, Lincolnshire, Wainfleet saw 80 millimetres in 24 hours. We're well above 100 millimetres now. Extensive flooding there, and the cereals event taking place in Lincolnshire this week was also affected. The organisers advised that people that came should bring 4x4s, for example. Kent also seeing a lot of rain, particularly on Monday night we saw over 100 millimetres in just a few hours actually in northwest Kent, leading to flooding and some road closures on the M25 as well. So the flooding is not great news, but the rain was much needed, and many people, many farmers at least, have been very happy about the rain this week. This is just a selection of 4 different weather stations that have seen a lot of rain through this week. 173 millimetres there in Shropshire, which is 320% of its monthly average rainfall, and this is just in the space of the first 13 days of the month. So we've still got another 2 weeks or so to go this month, but as you can see, many places well above average, which is what we need because there's still a big deficit from the last 12 months or so. Here's a shot from Suffolk earlier on in the week showing the impact that this heavy rain has had on some of the barley crop here just outside Bungay. This was associated with the thunderstorms that affected parts of Suffolk on Monday evening as well. And talking of those, here's the lightning for the last 7 days. A good cluster of different types of storms here, the different colours here indicating different days of the week that they occurred on. And the ones on Monday evening in particular caused the problems. These are the light blue ones here across parts of East Anglia and indeed across that northwestern part of Kent, where we saw a lot of rain falling in a very small area that led to that flooding problems we saw earlier on this week. Now, a great way to keep in touch with all the rain, the thunderstorms, that sort of thing. If you're out and about and you want to know if rain's heading your way, head to WQRadar. You can sign up and see radar with 5-minute interval data. You can also see weather observations on top of that, so wind, speed and direction, temperature as well, which is ideal for checking it before you go spraying. But you can also get lightning alerts via text and email, which would be very handy, of course, during this very unsettled spell of weather. And of course, you can also go back and look at the archive data. If you want to look back at a weather event in the past, or indeed the last few days, you can go back and see how things evolved across the UK. Now, it all came about because of low pressure that's been building in across the UK. It's been stuck there really for the last 7 days. It developed over France and has been gradually working its way northwards. And you can see just how much rain associated with this very slow moving area of low pressure. And the main reason why it's been very slow moving is the jet stream, this big dip in the jet stream. This is what we call a trough. And when you get this big dip, things become very slow moving, but also you're on the northern side of the jet, so you're in the relatively cool air. To the other side of the jet, you've got very warm air coming up from the south. So actually, much of Central and Eastern Europe have had exceptionally warm weather, even hot weather in some places. Lithuania hit 35.7 degrees on Wednesday, which is its highest June temperature ever recorded. So very warm conditions over Europe, a very active jet stream separating these two types of air masses, and so we've seen several rounds of severe thunderstorms on the boundary between these two air masses across Central Europe through this week. In fact, Slovenia had some hail as up to 12 centimetres in diameter from a few supercell thunderstorms that moved across the area as well, which caused a lot of damage to buildings and cars and that sort of thing. We've also seen flooding in parts of the Balkans from intense thunderstorms here over the last few days as well. So, looking at the rainfall across East Anglia in a little bit more detail, because of course it's been a big story this week. This graph here shows the percent chance of getting 25 millimetres in just 1 day as you go through the different months of the year. So up the side here we've got the percent chance. Notice the numbers are very low, we're only going up to 5% here. But you'll notice there's a big cluster of these months, in the summer in particular, where you've got a slightly higher chance of getting that 25 millimetres in any one place in this region during that particular month. August standing out as having the highest risk, and this is because in the summer months you're more likely to get a lot of rain in just one day because the air is warmer, therefore it holds more moisture, but also you could have some thunderstorm activity mixed in with that as well, which can locally give you a lot of rain. Notice there's very little chance of getting 25 mil in one day during the winter and early spring, and again it starts to tail off again during the autumn and into the winter with more generic areas of low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. Now if you change that threshold to just 12 millimeters, you'll notice it's much more spread evenly across the board. The spring months of course are our driest months, so we're more likely to see less rainfall here anyway, but generally speaking it's a little bit more level pegging here with your chances of getting half an inch of rain, for example. So you're more likely to see these extreme rainfall events in the summer months than you are during of course the winter months, and that's what we've seen over the last few days or so. Here's the patterning for the next 7 days. The low pressure that was over the UK has now moved off towards the northwest, but it's not gone very far. And as I run this sequence through the next 5 days or so, you'll notice it continues to sit there spinning around. So with low pressure close by, we are going to see showers developing, sometimes some longer spells of rain, primarily affecting the north and west of the UK, closest to that area of low pressure, whereas higher pressure over the nearby continent will try to extend in at times. So the further south and east you go, the better chance of the drier and brighter weather to be found. Now towards the middle part of next week, we're keeping an eye on this area of low pressure to the southwest, because that may start to push up across the UK, and ahead of it we could start to draw up some quite warm and humid air. So there is the potential for temperatures initially to come up midweek, but also with this low pressure coming in, we could well see some thundery outbreaks of rain developing a bit more widely. So perhaps a little bit of flooding potential midweek, given how wet the ground is right now, but eventually that will move through and we'll go back into that pattern of low pressure to the northwest, higher pressure to the southeast, and so things will tend to dry up a little bit again across the south and east of the country. Now, a better way to look at that is to look at ensemble data, this is where we run the same computer model multiple times with slight tweaks at the beginning of the forecast to see what the possible outcomes could be. So each of these lines on this graph here is a different computer forecast. They all start off pretty close together, and you notice they start to diverge as you go forward in time. You can see the day here along the x-axis. So this is for the mean sea level pressure across East Anglia, and you can see at first there's pretty good agreement there at the beginning of the forecast period for quite a few days actually for the pressure to start to gradually come up. So that signals that higher pressure trying to nudge in from the nearby continent. Notice though it's only 1020 millibars, so it's not exceptionally high, it's not 1040 for example, so it's still likely that we will see a few showers, but overall it's not going to be anywhere near as unsettled as we've seen it for the last few weeks or so. Then notice this drop in the pressure towards midweek. That's that area of low pressure coming up from the southwest with the potential for a longer spell of rain, and thereafter the signal is incredibly messy. There's quite a few ensemble members going with higher pressure building in, but equally there's quite a few going on with lower pressure building in as well. The average, this red line, pretty much goes straight down the middle. So beyond midweek, there's no real clear signal as to how the weather will evolve for the rest of the month, or indeed into early July. As you can see, there's such a wide range of possible outcomes here. So we're fairly confident until about midweek, Wednesday, Thursday time, and then beyond that, the uncertainty grows quite a bit for the end of the month. And that's also reflected somewhat in the temperature ensemble as well. So you can see this is for the maximum temperature again for East Anglia. Gradually you'll notice it's going up towards midweek, which looks like our warmest day will probably be on Wednesday when we could be in the low 20s. There's a couple of members up here going for about 25 degrees as a maximum temperature, but beyond that they come back down, then they're more or less flatlining all the way along. These days here all look very similar, very little variation from day to day, and so again just highlighting how big the spread is on some of these, between 22 degrees and 11 degrees as your daytime high. So it'll be somewhere between the two, but there's a lot of uncertainty in the forecast at the moment. So for week one across Europe, this is between now and up until sort of midweek next week. You'll notice this is the temperature anomaly, below average temperatures across the west because we've got that low pressure close by, but gradually we will warm up with time. But notice the heat wave continues across Eastern Europe. We've already had issues from the heat in parts of the Baltic states, and that's likely to continue with further 30 plus degrees across many parts of Eastern Europe for the next few days or so. And then by week two, it looks like with the high pressure trying to build a little bit more back in, that heat becomes a bit more widespread and also shifts a bit further east into Western Russia as well. So quite widely across Europe, it'll be pretty warm, I think, through the week 2 period. This is the 20th of June to the 26th of June there. As I say, there's a lot of uncertainty beyond that into the early parts of July. So I'm going to show you 2 scenarios here, 2 different models that we're looking at. Now these maps here are the mean pressure anomaly. The red here indicating where pressure is higher than normal for the time of the year, and the blues here indicating where pressure is lower than normal for the time of the year. Now you'll notice on this particular map we've got high pressure to the northwest of the UK and lower pressure off to the east. This is one scenario. I'll show you another scenario now which shows lower pressure to the west of the UK and higher pressure to the east. So they are in complete opposite directions, if you like, which means there's a lot of uncertainty as to which way the weather is going to go for the end of the month and indeed into early July. This is week 4. I'll show you the same thing. Lower than normal pressure across Scandinavia in this one scenario. In another scenario we've got higher than normal pressure over Scandinavia, and again it's for the same period. So really beyond the next 7 to 10 days there's a lot of uncertainty for the rest of the month and indeed on into early July. So to summarise that for the UK, it's going to be pretty changeable. That's what we're fairly confident on, with a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers, but there'll be some dry days in there, not raining all the time by any means. Some rain, particularly in the north and west where you're closer to that area of low pressure, but perhaps for a time more widely middle part of next week. And temperatures generally near average, although for a time we might just get slightly warmer than average before coming back down again. But as I stress, there's a lot of uncertainty, so do stay in touch with the latest forecast over the next couple of weeks or so. As ever, we'd love to hear from you. Send your feedback in via email or on Twitter, or if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to leave us a comment below and hit the subscribe button.